Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Top Producer Show. So our mission is to educate, equip, and train servant leaders. Our vision is to create financially independent achievers, and our purpose is to help people grow. And right now we're going over The Unfair Advantage by Robert Kiyosaki, and today we're going to be talking about debt. So before we go into that, we're going to go ahead and invite some people onto here. Whoop, if I could press the button, there we go. Does.
Well, Savannah says for sure next time we do something, it's gonna be someplace warm with the beach.
Yes, I agree.
And John. Oh.
Alrighty.
Okay. So. Hello. Here's what we're doing. We're going over the book Unfair Advantage by Robert Kiyosaki. And yesterday we went over taxes. And taxes is one of the big unfair advantages. Teddy is here. Hello. Today we're going to talk about debt. And debt is a monster, like this little kitty,
Yes.
who also wanted to be in the show. She's trying to hang out. So, debt. In 1971, Nixon took the dollar off of the U.S. gold standard, which basically created savers as losers, and debtors became winners. Why? Because in 1971, the U.S. dollar stopped being actual real money. See, before 1971, it was actually backed by gold, so there's only so much of it. It was something tangible. Fort Knox was just one of the places that the gold was held and still held. So we still have the gold. What we did is we created a whole new banking system, which the Founding Fathers warned us about. I think it was Benjamin Franklin specifically said, if you want to rob a person, you can rob a person with a gun, but if you want to rob a country, go to fractionalized banking, which is basically really, I believe, the reason we left Europe to begin with was because of taxes and because they started creating fake money, which created inflation, which stole the people's wealth. And it creates savers or losers now because of this. AKA, more money that's printed means your spending power is less, meaning if your money is just sitting somewhere, just saving, you're actually physically losing money because they're devaluing it faster than it would be going up in value or you'd be earning interest. Interest rates, when I was born, which was 45 years ago, an interest rate could be as high as 3%. Now it's 0.03%. I mean, you're not earning anything. You're actually going backwards. How much is a billion? So in 2010, the U.S. government printed $1 billion a day, approximately. So what is a billion? A billion. So a billion seconds is 31 years ago. A billion minutes is 1900 years ago. A billion hours is 114,000 years ago. And 1 billion days is 2,770 years ago. A billion seconds ago, for instance, when he wrote this was 1979. Now it'd be, based on 2010, it'd be 1990. 1 billion minutes ago, it was 100 BC. That would be interesting. And then a billion hours ago, it was the Stone Age. A billion days ago, humans were not on this planet or didn't exist at that point. So how much is a trillion? Because, we're printing trillions. A trillion seconds is 32,000 years ago. So what does the future hold? printing tons of money, devaluing the money, higher taxes, and more inflation. So things are going to go up. The U.S. currency will collapse. Many people that I've talked to and read about and watched have said this is going to happen. And the fact is, it's happened before. For those of you who don't know, it's happened before. George Washington issued continental currency, which was paper money used to finance the Revolutionary War. The Confederate dollar was also issued in the South to fund the Civil War. Both of these currencies collapsed, which is why we rewrote the Constitution. After 1776, it's been rewritten, and we created ourselves as a corporation and borrowed money. Guess from who? It's so funny. We borrowed money from England. Dumbasses. But that was our only way back out. What should you do? Instead of saving money, he said you need to take money. If you have money, which most people don't, but if you have money, you have to invest it in something that kind of is inflation proof. And one of the things that's inflation proof is gold, silver, guns, bullets. There's certain things that have intrinsic value that people hold on to. How do you create your own printing press? Because you can actually do this. You can create your own printing press. Scott Deverall, what's happening, sir? We're going over The Unfair Advantage by Robert Kiyosaki. So how do you create your own printing press? You basically use debt to acquire assets. Use debt to acquire assets. That is what the system is built for. Is it legal? A lot of people say, well, is that even legal? Yes, and it's what the government wants you to do, which is why it's legal to do. And we, learned a little bit about that yesterday with tax laws. Michael Murphy's here. What's up, sir? As strange as it may sound to most people, the government only wants you to get in debt. That's what they're looking for. They want you to get in debt. The government offers tax incentives and advantages to the people who can create debt, specific debt, not just any debt, but specific debt. So here's a little financial education for you. In 1971, the government started printing fake money. The United States used a lot of it, guess where? To buy oil. Now, some of you don't know, the oil embargo in the late 70s. The oil embargo in the late 70s started because in 1971 we took the dollar off of the gold standard and we started spending money. We basically started funneling money over to Saudi Arabia to buy oil. And guess what? It worked. We got oil, money started going up, and they were called petrol dollars, and they needed a place to land. So basically, they were looking for a way to launder the money somehow. Here's how they did it. First, they went to London. They had really big banks that could handle this large cash flow. From London, it was all lent out to South America. So, you can imagine what happened there. South America and Latin America became basically a bubble that busted. In the late 70s, 80s, there were a lot of wars, right? Then the money flowed to Japan, and Japan busted in the late 80s. Savings and loan scandals also happened during that time, which is interesting. Then the money flowed to Mexico and busted. In 1994, it was the peso crisis. I remember this because I have a friend that was actually going down there like high school time, and he's like, oh my gosh, I went to pull out money, and I thought they gave me, instead of $1,500, I thought they gave me $150,000 because the peso, they gave so many more pesos, and the reality was it was all inflations. It was all inflation. And here's the thing, Dakota, about the stocks. It's all bullshit. And I can show you and give you the exact details of it. But basically, during the Clinton administration, the Bush administration, Reagan. It goes all the way back to Reagan when the last bust in 87 happened. They put together this group of people, and it's called like the PPC, something protection, PPG, the something protection group. And basically what happens is an anonymous fund comes in and starts buying stock in offshore accounts and different names and different enterprises to basically float the market that's crashing. When you see a massive adjustment like what just happened, that's technically what's going on, is they are adjusting. Throw her in the other room, please.
Yep.
Sorry, our cat wants attention and doesn't realize we're on a show, which is what cats do. And now she's hiding. Come on. So, That's what's actually happened, and it is the talk right now. Because GameStop or whatever. I mean, what actually happened is probably somebody typed in the wrong key and was supposed to make something else flow. And instead, they threw it through GameStop, and laundered money through there. And then the big banks shut everything down because they were like, okay, this is bullshit. People are actually able to get rich, and that was our job. So they shut it down, and they shut down all trading, which is really interesting. Because 1971, the U.S. dollar stopped becoming real money, gave the banks the ability to print money, and the dollar making money basically less valuable. And she edited all this. This is great. Sorry, the cat was typing on my computer. Has this happened many times? Yes. And so, financial lesson, oil went up, spent petrodollars, Latin America. Okay, so it went from the peso, then it went to Asia and crashed the Asian market in 97, and then Russia in 1998. Guess what we did? Well, the U.S. did not need to borrow any money because of some of the things that were set in the 80s and early 90s. By the late 90s, early 2000, that time frame was actually, we had balanced the budget, and that was one of, I think, Reagan ran on that, lower taxes, balance the budget, and he got it basically, because it takes, anytime they're going to do something, it takes years. I mean, if you want to implement, think about this, if you want to implement weight loss, how long does it take? It doesn't happen now, it happens months from now. So how long do you think policies take to actually take effect? It takes years and years, especially on a budget kind of idea. So we built up the military, we increased spending in certain places, and that actually got the balance to be budgeted. So during the Clinton administration, there was a balanced budget. Guess what they did? Well, they couldn't just sit there, so they increased something. They increased what? They increased borrowing. And here's how they did it. He's got a tracking record of it. So from 1993 to 2001, the Clintons had a balanced budget. So the U.S. did not need to borrow any money. So here's what it did. This was bad news for the bankers, who basically needed someone to borrow the money. So they needed to somebody to borrow trillions. Andrew's here. Tom's here. What's up? Here's what they did. They found Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are GSEs. They're government-sponsored enterprises. And they borrowed somewhere between 3 and 5 trillion from them, and created the new home market and the refinance boom and bust. When Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and their executives came under investigation, government officials like the Clintons and Alan Greenspan and all the smart people, right, supposedly, challenged the rules of the game, or changed the rules of the game for who? For the big 5 banks. So watch this. They had to keep the money borrowed to keep the cash flowing. So if there's no borrowers, there's no money, because that's how debt works. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. So they found lenders like Countrywide. Countrywide was horrible. And they started looking for anyone who wanted to borrow money, and they went into low-income places and all kinds of things, and they created something called ninja loans. Literally called ninja loans. No income, no job, no asset. Ninja loans. And it was the subprime bubble, is what they created. Once they funded these loans, Wall Street's criminals or capitalists would package them up and sell them as assets on a fictitious rating system. So what they did is they took shit and labeled it ABC, good, and then sold it into the foreign market saying it was going to be good. That's, if you watch, I can't remember, there was a movie, The Inside Job, that's what kind of that was about. MBS, mortgage-backed securities is what they called it. So anytime you're selling shit, you're going to give it a fancy name. CDO, collateralized debt obligations, sounds really technical, aka derivatives of the subprime market. Now, the derivative market is the scariest thing. Warren Buffett said the derivative market by far is the scariest thing he's ever seen. During the Clinton administration, they took the derivative market for $100 trillion to $700 trillion. Yeah. Not good, by the way. Of course, Alan Greenspan and Bernanke, who was head of the Fed, said that they didn't see this shit show coming, right? So the difference between horse shit and subprime mortgage market is if you actually package horse shit correctly, it's valuable. I mean, as fertilizer and different things. The mortgage market was not. So Bernanke actually said this. This is great. Julie said this. In October 20th, 2005, he's like, house prices have risen 25% over the last 2 years. Although speculative activity has increased in some areas at a national level, these price increases largely reflect a strong economic fundamentals, such as stealing and lying. I mean, so you're the smartest person on the planet when it comes to economics, and houses are going up at 25% every 2 years, and you don't see that there's an issue. This just spells like criminal activity all over it. So what I've realized is we're basically actually living in Gotham, but unfortunately there is no Batman. Bernanke, in November 15, 2005, so like 1 month later, with respect to their safety, derivatives, for the most part, are traded amongst sophisticated institutions, criminal organizations, and individuals, theft, who have a considerable incentive to basically watch over them and use them properly. Incentive to, it's watch over them, not watch under them. Sorry, I wrote this really quickly. March 28, 2007, on the border economy and financial markets of the problem in the subprime market seems likely to be contained. So this is Bernanke still talking. January 10th, 2008, the Fed is not currently forecasting a recession. No, for those of you who don't know what happened in 2008, the mortgage business completely vanished. Like, you know, this is when Countrywide disappeared. This is when HSB disappeared here in Carmel, Indiana. 850 jobs in one day. They just walked in and closed the whole department and said, sorry, we're done. I can't remember how many thousands and thousands of jobs lost across the country. This is where people I know committed suicide. This is where I know people, you know, basically left their spouses, and people who were living in $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 houses here moved into apartments and started working at gas stations. And I'm like literally serious. March 16, 2009. We'll see a recession coming at the end of this year, probably. Mr. Bernanke is an MIT grad, professor at Stanford and Princeton, and a brilliant economist. Yet, he couldn't see any of this coming. Or maybe he made so much off of it he didn't care. That's my own opinion. As the mortgage industry crashed, next came the banking, the big banks overseas crashing. Europe, Portugal, Ireland, the European market, which is Portugal, Ireland, Italy, and Greece, and Spain, all collapsed underneath a mountain of debt because they were the ones buying the packaged shit that we were selling, along with Japan. After 1971, the booms and busts kept happening. Why do you think bankers don't like savers? Savings does not produce cash for bankers, and here's why. If you take your money and you put it in a bank, you'd think that was a good thing. It's not. Because the banks can't fractionalize that. They can't take the savings and do anything with it. They have to pay you interest. So technically, by saving money, the banks lose money, which is really weird. But if you understand fractionalized banking, that's how it is. So a simple way to explain the banking system is called fractionalized reserve. It's a fractionalized reserve system. So a simple way to explain it is debt creates income. Here's how it works. If I sign a mortgage, let's just call this the document. If I sign this mortgage for $100,000 and I give it to the bank, right? The bank then can go to the World Bank or the IMF, and they're able to borrow against that debt because they said, look, I've got income coming in on a monthly basis. So it's for $100,000, but it's over 30 years. He had no business experience, theoretical professor. Yes. So here's what happened. They were able to give, and in general, they fractionalize at about the ratio of 1 to 10. So 10 times that comes out. So if I basically signed a debt for $100,000, the bank can go borrow $1 million. Here's what they have to do. They have to keep $100,000 of it in the bank, FDIC, Federal Insured Deposit, and then they get to lend out the other $900,000. $100,000. How do they lend it out? In the form of car loans, in the form of personal loans, in the form of credit cards. How this could not be a problem? Well, it is. So, banking system is fractionalized. So debt, basically, it's normally a 1 to 10 ratio. During bad times, the government, basically during this one administration, during bad times, the government actually let the banks, the top 5 banks, do a 40 to 1 ratio. 40 to 1, or 1 to 40, I'm sorry, 1 to 40. So if you gave them $100,000, they were able to borrow 40, is it 40 million? 100,000? No, 4 million. 4 million. $4 million. It's crazy. So, by creating debt and fractionalizing it, printing more money, your savings is basically worth less and less due to inflation. So you put money in the bank, you're supposed to be earning interest off of it, but they're creating debt and then printing more money. So by the time your money sits in the bank for any period of time, it actually has devalued. The $100 now has, let's say, 90% spending, even though you've earned interest on it. So you're actually going backwards. A lot of people don't realize this because we're still teaching the industrial age, but living in the information age is what he kind of says. The system is the same all over the world and mandated by the World Bank and the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund. Taxes reward debtors. Taxes reward debtors. Learn to be a debtor, like a responsible debtor. Learn to invest in debt. In 1973, my rich dad said, there are 3 things that you need to learn if you want to follow in my footsteps and be successful and be wealthy. Number 1, you have to learn how to sell. The ability to sell is absolutely the most important skill of the entrepreneur. If you can't sell, you're screwed. Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, which I'm not fond of either one of them, but they were sitting at a graduating class. I can't remember if it was Stanford or Harvard. I think it was Harvard, actually. They were sitting in front of Harvard business grads. And one of the girls stands up and says, hey, guys, and I went and looked it up just so I could see it. They're like, hey, if I were to, I just graduated, what training, what school, where do you think I should go? What do you think I should do? And they kind of sat there for a minute. And Warren Buffett was the first one to talk. He goes, well, probably if you do anything, I would go to a class, alternative class, and get sales skills. Sales skills are the things that changed my business dealings around. He goes, I thought I knew everything, and he did know everything you needed to know about the stock market and investing, and knew all the terms and everything. He started actually reading from the library at age 8, and by age 12, he had read every book the library had on finances, and this was the state library. And I believe it was in Nebraska, if I remember right. I think it was Omaha, Nebraska, is where he's from. Don't quote me on that because I can't remember exactly, but it was somewhere cold and basically in the middle of the country. So once he read all that, he said, go get sales skills. He goes, I took a Dale Carnegie course, and it changed everything. So learn to sell is the first lesson. Number 2, learn to invest in market trends. Know what the fuck is going on. Don't live under a rock, where you have no idea what's happening. You're like, oh, well, I bought all these, commemorative plates, and I didn't know commemorative plates were going out of style. Well, you should have, because there's information out there. Most people do this. They put, cotton in their ears or crap in their ears and crap in their eyes, and they're like, I don't know why I didn't see anything. So learn to invest in market trends and just notice market trends, first of all. Learn to invest in real estate. He says learn to acquire debt and manage debt to achieve wealth. Why are so many people in trouble? People are in trouble because poor people go into debt and buy liabilities. They go into debt and buy liabilities. The worst thing is they define the liability as an asset. They're like, my house is an asset. But it takes money out of my pocket, which makes it not an asset. Homes, cars, boats, crap. Rich people borrow money to buy assets that create cash flow, not to live in. Which is why Grant Cardone says, rent your house, rent the house you live in, and rent out the houses you own. Rent where you live and rent out what you own, which means you'll always have a cash flow and you'll always be able to pay for everything. Why are so many people in trouble? Because of that. Use debt to finance assets. So you use debt to finance assets, and what he talked about is infinite return. And infinite return is where he went in, borrowed, he basically saved some money. He borrowed money against the assets he had, was able to completely 100% finance because he took a second mortgage back on this one particular property. And he created this massive cash flow between him and this other partner. And he's like, so what was our ROI? Well, ROI is usually based on what you invested into it. He goes, we just had some time. He goes, we didn't invest any money at all. It wasn't any of our money. It was all borrowed. You know, the 20% was borrowed from, it was a take-back mortgage, which is like a second mortgage, private financing. And the bank financed the rest. So what is the return? He goes, it was an infinite return. And it's infinite also because rent goes up. Rent goes up. Have you ever been renting somewhere and they come in and they said, hey, guess what? Because the economy's going so well, rent's actually going down. You know, you were getting charged $800 and now it's only $600. It's never happened. It's never happened. Even during the crashes, it never happened. Here's why. During, like when the economy's going well, everybody can buy a house, right? So occupancy inside of most places that are like renting goes down a little bit. So you have less occupancy, but you can still charge really good rent. When the economy crashes, all the people that could buy can't buy, which is like what's about to happen right now. They can't buy. Why? Because interest rates are going to go up. And interest rates go up and price range is so out of whack right now, you'll have a crash again. It's just what's going to happen. So rents are going to go up again. And then we're creating, you know, we're printing another couple $1 trillion. And on top of that, they're talking about raising minimum wage of $15, which is going to basically create, that's imminent collapse. It's going to be fun to watch, honestly. Invest nothing and get growing returns. Like that's infinite. That's an infinite return. You invest nothing, but get growing returns. So rent always goes up. Property value does not always go up. Property value does not always go up. But, as Grant Cardone said, income producing property almost always goes up if it's income producing. But most properties aren't income. Not all properties are income producing. So every day, billions of dollars are going to be printed. Your house is not an asset. And a 10% ROI is what the stock industry says you should go after. He says you go after infinite. But this takes a couple things. First of all, it takes a dream, desire, you know, something you want to go after. 2, it takes responsibility, and most people are not responsible. Most people, you can't hand them anything of value without them screwing it up, breaking it, not being responsible, not showing up, not calling back, etc., etc. Most people are just not responsible, so that's hard because if you're not responsible, you can't prove to the bank you're responsible, they're not going to let you borrow any money. They won't let you borrow any money for a car. They won't let you get a credit card. They won't let you get a house, and they damn sure aren't going to let you get an investment property or any type of business, right? Because you've proven that you're not responsible. So one of the key things is to be responsible, do what you say you're going to do, pay things on time, put it together the right way. And it's amazing, like doors open all the time. So that's basically what we have for today on debt. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about another unfair advantage. So far we've talked about tax, we've talked about debt, and you're going to love the next one.
All right. So if you guys haven't yet, you want to go to the Top Producers Show Facebook page, and each one of these chapters, we're going to be posting our notes from these, so that way if you guys would like our notes, you can have them, or if you want to go back through the video and take your own notes, you're more than welcome to do so. So, because if you write it down yourself, you're more likely to actually retain the information rather than just reading through it, because you're going to forget it. You're going to forget 70% of the information by just listening. That's why you want to write things down. So, another thing you want to do, you want to go to YouTube and follow us on YouTube. Each one of these videos is going to be uploaded to there as well. So with that, that is what we have for you guys today, and we will see you tomorrow.